What's going on? Welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas, Cameron, and Tyler hanging out with you Thursday, May 12th. Later in the evening. Fellas, how are we doing tonight?
I am exhausted. So I don't know if you've seen the movie Yesterday, but it is a movie about where the parents say yes to everything the kids want to do. And so I had a yes day as a class celebration today. And see, I rigged the whole thing. I had them write down 3 things they want on a piece of paper, and then I drew it out of a hat randomly. Except all I did was just draw the same piece of paper over and over and then say what I wanted to do. So like we went and played kickball to start the day. And then there was one where I put shaving cream on 2 tables, and they just went ham playing with shaving cream for like 45 minutes. And that was just a disaster, but it was so much fun. And then we did like a dance party, and we watched a movie for an hour and a half, which was great. We watched Sonic the Hedgehog. Did not realize how funny of a movie that is. Jim Carrey played a pretty great role there. I mean, he was kind of a kook, but I mean, he is in real life. But he played it very well. So an exhausting day, but a good day.
I have so many follow-up questions to that. We could spend a whole 20 minutes on my follow-up questions, I think. Tyler, how's it going?
How about that weather, huh? Like, we can legitimately, say, how about the weather this time?
Well, last night.
That's fair.
Yes, and apparently we're going to get some storms tonight again. Apparently.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, so, stay safe, y'all, for those in Twin Cities areas, because it's not fun weather, to say the least.
Well, by the time you hear this, we hope you have stayed safe, because you probably won't hear this until afterwards. Point. So right now, all right. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. We got a great episode coming for you today, though. Got an draft for fantasy football. So not a dynasty start, a dynasty question to discuss, news and notes to cover. And then we are going to do a rookie mock draft, not a redraft mock draft, but an actual just rookie dynasty draft. I'm stoked for that. I am super excited for that. We're going to do a 3-round rookie mock draft. And it's just going to be best player available up and down the board in our opinion. And we will just take best player available, and we will go through that mock draft, and you will be able to hear our thoughts on a lot of the rookie prospects now that we know a good chunk of their landing spots. But to start our episode, let's dive in to question of the day. And you know what? The transitions haven't been coming through on previous episodes. I'm done fighting Riverside. So Riverside, get your act together. That's all I'm going to say. But question of the day has to do with dynasty formats. From Kanye Seinfeld on TikTok. I love that username. Kanye Seinfeld on TikTok. What is the price on aging running backs, such as Derrick Henry and Ezekiel Elliott in dynasty leagues? So what is the price on aging running backs? Example, Derrick Henry, Ezekiel Elliott in dynasty leagues.
I'll take Zeke.
Okay, I was gonna say you have him, so you take him.
He's not.
I was going to say, I do.
Go ahead,
I think they're valued. I think they're valued differently. Like I understand, like Zeke is not the 24-year-old, 1250 running back anymore, right? He's not that guy. But aging feels like a little bit of a stretch. Derrick Henry's aging. That we can all agree on. But anyways.
Yeah, Zeke is 26. So you're like, oh, he should be, that should be a nice little, prime year for Zeke, if we want to call it that. Mm-hmm. But he's played 6 years in the league. So it's kind of like, okay, so if we're going aging off of experience, sure. Totally
off of
get
miles.
That. Right. I think this kind of plays into my monologue from last week. He's a low-end running back 1 still, and everyone's treating him like he's a running back 2. And if you can get him as a running back 2, I mean, that's awesome. But if you, let's say you are a dynasty owner like myself in fantasy, and you're like, okay, should I move off of Zeke or not? I say hold on to him, because it seems like he's going to be there for the foreseeable future. And if you get a whiff of him not being there, and you do have a worry about him getting too old, sure, then go ahead. But get fair value on it. Don't undersell him, because he will still be a solid contributor to your fantasy team.
So what's the price, though?
Let me ask you.
So what's the price
That's what I was just going to say.
on a guy like Zeke?
So, I guess, I mean, I was going to use my trade with Cam as a little bit of a guidance tool with our Cam Akers and 101 trade, and that's just not a good way to go about it. But if you can get like a solid wide receiver 2 and a handcuff for Zeke, maybe even like a pick next year, like a second or a third, I think that's fair value for Zeke. And that's maybe a little bit cheaper than what you would hope for, because you did take him to be a running back 1 for your dynasty team. But as long as you're getting production and at least one of your players, it's better than selling the farm.
So let's say I offer you, let's just talk our dynasty league, because my team, the way it's set up, I'll probably be a seventh pick or later. That's top 4.
Yep.
And so let's say I offer you my first and like a Ramondre Stevenson for next year.
I would not take that.
No, you would not take it. So you would need a little bit more. You would want a player right now. All right, that makes sense. So let's say I offered you the same trade back. I gave you 101 this year. So Breece Hall for Zeke. Who are you taking?
Zeke. But
Okay.
if it was next,
I would take.
If it was next year, I would maybe take Breece just with a year of experience. But
Yeah,
That's so
sense.
tough.
I think I'd take
because
Breece.
Yeah, because I at the same time, I love Zeke. I'm still a believer in Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like holding out for like one more. It's tough because you could get like another year and a half of top tier production from Zeke, but then Breece Hall really steps into his prime, and so it's okay. Do you want to play the waiting game of like another year and a half? How long do you want to be rebuilding for? Do you want to be rebuilding forever? I think it does. Like team context does kind of come into play. But I think if you do give up Zeke, like you want a first, but you also want at least a semi-contributing running back in return. I think I would like. I like that. I'd like the idea of having a first and another running back. I just don't know if Ramondre Stevenson would be the running back I'd want in return.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I think, for me, the reason I would say Breece is this year, after statting him out, I got Zeke like 42 points ahead of Breece Hall for their finish. So that'd be 2.5 points over the whole year, right? And so when I'm looking at it, okay, I lose out on 2.5 points a game, but I have a guy now where I don't have to worry about him for the next 4 years, kind of a thing, who I think is only going to get better, is only going to cut more into Michael Carter's role. So that would be my reasoning behind it, just because I do have that age. I think the age factor is significant enough
Right.
to kind of outweigh how much I think Zeke's going to outplay him this year. Because I still think, Zeke can still easily be a 11, 12 touchdown guy, I mean, there's no reason he can't be, especially in this offense right now. So
Right. Still high power.
that's just where I leave. Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way for Derrick Henry, because we're talking about, Derrick Henry could still be running back 4 this year.
Oh, easy. Yeah.
He can, but he is turning 29.
Yeah.
Like, how many more years are you going to have of that? Is it going to be like an Adrian Peterson fall off, or like, oh, you get a 1,000-yard season on another team, but you're not, like, you would never start him,
Yeah.
Like when Adrian Peterson did it with Washington. Like, I would have hated starting him every week, but, he just kind of grunts his way to 1,000 yards. So I think I'd do the same thing. I think I'd trade the 101 for Breece. 102 would be tough with Kenneth Walker. If I went looking at next year, I'd probably want a first, and like you're saying, kind of that other running back. If it was a high first and I wasn't trying to compete, so if I was rebuilding, I think I'd take out another high first. If I can get like a 105 next year, I think I'd start considering that. Probably adding in a second for Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry is so tough because you're likely going to get top tier production from him one more season. Hopefully, fingers crossed, one more season. That's not a guarantee. But the problem is, dude's 29 after this year. Like, do you really want a 29-year-old running back on your roster? And like, that's not applying any context, but let's be real. Derrick Henry's hit the 1,500 touch mark. So it's really only downhill for Derrick Henry. Like, it probably won't. There's no more going up for Derrick Henry. So do you sell Derrick Henry even for younger pieces who probably will never produce top 5 production? But let's say you got Cam Akers and I'm trying to think of like a lower tier like running back.
I would
3.
do Cam Akers for Derrick Henry right now, straight up.
Straight up, you would.
I would, because the way it's just looking at Cam Akers, I feel the same way about J.K. Dobbins. They're in offenses where they're going to score touchdowns. And he's 20. I mean, actually, Cam Akers, I probably would struggle a little bit with just because
that Achilles injury terrifies me still.
Yes,
I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah. So let me ask you that, like J.K. Dobbins, would you do J.K. Dobbins for those two? Either of those two?
Not straight up. I'd want another piece in addition to J.K. probably. Not a big piece, but
I think I would do J.K. straight up for either one. Like, I would take J.K. for either one of those two.
If you gave me like J.K. in a second for Derrick Henry, I'd probably do it. I would I need something to sweeten the deal at least a little bit, where I get at least another piece of future capital outside of. Like, I need you to like be committed to me that you're actually trying to win now, and you're not just trying to take young pieces from me.
For sure.
Cool. Well, that hopefully that gives a little bit more insight to our thoughts on aging prospects such as Derrick Henry. If you want to throw Zeke in there, I guess that's understandable. But let's turn the corner. Some news and notes from around the league. Big note from today: Jerry Jeudy arrested this morning for second-degree criminal tampering with a domestic violence enhancer. As of right now, there's no suspension coming his way, nothing like that. I'm guessing we can probably expect one. I think the only thing that we can really conclude right now is if Jerry Jeudy should miss time, from a fantasy football perspective, Courtland Sutton is the guy you want in that Denver offense now. I think it goes all of a sudden then Courtland Sutton, Tim Patrick, KJ Hamler is the order in which you'll want those guys. Any disagreements there?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, especially now that KJ Hamler is going to be the next Tyler Lockett. I think you really got to look at him. For those who don't know, KJ Hamler said that he was going to try to be a Tyler Lockett, and it's like, bro, you're the 4th on the depth chart, and you have Javonte and Melvin Gordon. You are not Tyler Lockett. I love the dreams, but you're not.
You got to go put Courtland Sutton and Tyler Lockett's numbers side by side. Advanced stats. Mm-hmm. You got to put them side by side. They are the same player. Courtland Sutton and Tyler Lockett are the exact same player, and you can't convince me otherwise. So
Sutton's bigger though too, isn't he?
He is bigger. That is true.
So he's going to be even more of a red zone threat than Lockett was.
Yeah.
So Courtland Sutton season, baby.
Next piece of news: Sony Michel signs with the Miami Dolphins. 1 year, $1.7 million deal. Cameron, you got way too excited about this because I think you're actually convinced it's Sony Michel season in Miami.
You know, I don't actually think he's going to be relevant.
Okay,
but I do love myself against Sony Michel.
I never questioned your initial celebration of it, so I was like, wait, do you actually think it's Sony Michel season in Miami?
No, I really think he's going to be irrelevant, but I mean, he helped me win a playoff game last year. I loved him in the playoffs against New England. I drafted him high, and then he busted completely. But I still love myself a good Sony Michel.
I think Sony Michel is far more about Raheem Mostert than it is the Miami Dolphins actually wanting to utilize Sony Michel in their offense next year.
Yeah.
Raheem's what, 20? Is he 29? Is he 30?
29.
Yeah.
Yeah, 30. It's 29.
Coming off of 2 big injuries in back-to-back seasons. I think it's much more about Raheem Mostert than it is we don't have enough running backs on our roster. So,
well, I mean, Raheem Mostert is the new Tevin Coleman, right? He's the guy that gets the scheme, and he's just there as a mentor. He can maybe contribute, but it's not going to be enough for fantasy relevance or anything like that.
Yeah,
No.
for sure.
No. Most definitely not. Other signing, Mike Davis. Hot commodity on the free agent market. Signs with the Baltimore Ravens, 1 year, $1.2 million deal. I don't know. Does Mike Davis become interesting all of a sudden? Yes? No? Maybe so?
No.
Well, so I was going to say borderline just because we don't know the timetable for Dobbins and Edwards to come back.
Bingo.
So once we get closer to training camps or whatnot, then Mike Davis can be a little intriguing. But if you were holding a gun to my head and saying, would you pick a Mike Davis for the season right now? I'm not.
No, I'm not drafting him in redraft leagues. I'm not picking him up in dynasty leagues. I'm not doing anything with Mike Davis. I need to wait till training camp to hear how both Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are doing before I put any kind of emotional investment, statting even, into Mike Evans or Mike Davis. Excuse me. Last piece of news, probably the biggest piece of news from today. NFL released the full 2022 schedule today. Just a few highlights. We could go through the whole schedule, but that's a podcast in and of itself. A few highlights from the schedule. Russell Wilson makes his debut back in Seattle right away, week 1 with the Denver Broncos. That'll be fun. Bucks and Cowboys meet for week 1 again on Sunday Night Football. That one kind of confuses me. I don't understand why they're meeting week 1 again, but hey, NFL wants to make some money. I suppose that's a way to do it. Thanksgiving games. Bills versus Lions. Giants versus Cowboys. We got the Patriots and Vikings. Our Minnesota Vikings are playing on Thanksgiving. How do we feel?
I don't
Thankful.
understand. Nice.
Scared.
Is it just me, or do all the night games on Thanksgiving Day are just the most random games ever? Like last year, it was the Bills and the Saints, right? Like, you get the Lions at noon, then you get the Cowboys, and that's tradition. And then the third game is just like, yeah, we'll take the New England, Minnesota. How
We
about
still
that?
need a Thursday night football game, as if they can't have one at like 3:30 and one at 7:30, right? Like,
Also, we got to change tradition. Detroit does not deserve to play on Thanksgiving. They haven't deserved it ever. Ever.
Dan Campbell's going to
They're-
come bite your kneecap off because you said that.
Fine, he can be upset, but they name the last time they deserved it.
when they had
Never.
Matthew Stafford and Megatron, arguably one of the more dynamic and exciting wide receiver quarterback duos in the NFL.
Okay, they had one good year together. Okay, win-wise, not like fantasy relevance-wise.
Yeah.
And the rest of the team sucks. I mean, come on. They are going to be fun to watch this year, but their roster is terrible. I'm sorry. That's just how it is, and they're not getting better.
Yeah, who did they draw up in their matchup too? The Bills.
The Bills.
Night
So
night
that'll either be like a
Lions.
really interesting game, or the Bills are going to put up 56. Like the Bills might win by 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, what do you think the betting line will be for that game? Over, not over, under. What's the spread?
Oh,
14
yeah,
and a half.
14
I,
and a
I was
half.
gonna throw out 14 and a half. That was gonna be my, and you're taking the over, or not over. You're taking
I'm
the Bills to
taking
cover.
I
Yeah.
put 3 units down.
3 units.
I can
We
see
got
it
Christmas
now too.
Eve.
The commercials leading up to that game. The rookie Aiden Hutchinson, the superstar quarterback Josh Allen, who comes out on top.
I know.
Really?
Josh
Not
Allen.
putting Jared Goff up there.
Is that what we're advertising? Okay.
Wrap up that piece of news. Christmas Eve and Christmas Day games this year as well. Kind of bums me out. I'm not going to lie that there's Christmas Day games because me personally, NBA is a Christmas Day thing for me. I watch all the NBA games on Christmas Day. Now, unfortunately, I have to move to NFL football. I shouldn't say unfortunately. I'll be happy to watch NFL football, but like, I feel like the NFL can just like take Christmas Eve. Just let that be your day. Literally, just play every game on Christmas Eve. Not every game, but if you're going to schedule games on both, just put them all on Christmas Eve.
Yes.
I don't think you need to have overlapping competition with other sports markets. That doesn't make sense to me. But that's my business marketing brain going to work. So that wraps out news and notes for the week. Let's turn the corner to probably the most exciting part of our episode. The first ever Fantasy Football Fellas rookie mock draft. Let's do it. I have got, we are going to be using the Sleeper app for this.
Not a sponsor. Not a sponsor.
Not a sponsor for this, excuse me, for this draft.
Not a sponsor.
I'm working on getting it pulled up on my screen. That's why I'm taking so long here. There we go. I got the screen share up. You're going to be able to see the draft. Hopefully, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see the draft as we go through it. If you're on the podcast, I'm so sorry. You can go to our YouTube, Fantasy Football Fellas, to see the draft as we go through it live. But, Tyler, you have the first overall pick. Cameron, you have pick number 2. I have pick number 3. We are going to execute a 3-round rookie mock draft where we just alternate picks. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We'll go through 3 rounds, and we'll give you some of our favorite picks, and we'll give you some analysis on why we like each of those picks as well. I don't think I need to preface it any more than that. We're not drafting for teams either, right? Like if Tyler drafts like 3 running backs with the 101, or with the 101, the 212, and the 301, that's not like a team he's creating. It's just we're doing best player available all the way down the board and who we would take if we were in said spot with said players off the board. I think I've explained that well enough. Is there anything I didn't explain that we need clarifications on?
It's straightforward.
It's straightforward. That was kind of my thoughts too. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's do this thing, fellas. Tyler, with the 101, you are on the clock.
Oh, brother. Do I stall this out?
Please don't.
Please don't.
It's Breece Hall. I mean, the running back position is what's the word I'm looking for? It's a
scarcity.
Yes, there it is. Thank you. And Breece Hall, by far the best running back coming out of this class. He goes into a situation where he's going to take lead responsibilities. Breece Hall's the obvious choice.
Would agree.
I don't think anybody is disagreeing with you there whatsoever. Nobody at all. So, Breece Hall, 101. We've gotten questions on it, though, of like, who should the 101 be? Breece Hall. It doesn't matter if you think Drake London is going to have a better year this year. If Treylon Burks is going to have it. Like, it doesn't matter. The scarcity at the running back position requires you to take Breece Hall 101 because that dude can be special. He could be a special talent in the league. And that's not something you want to miss out with the scarcity at the position at the 101. So, 100% agree. Cameron, you're at the 102. What are your thoughts here?
So, I could be talked into going wide receiver. If I was going to go wide receiver here, I'd be really torn between Drake London and Treylon Burks. But, again, running backs, you need to take them. I'm going Kenneth Walker.
Really?
I don't think Rashad Penny sticks around after this year in Seattle because this year's going to go one of two ways. He's either going to be really good and they're not going to want to pay him, or he's going to be really bad and they're not going to want to play him. So Kenneth Walker will split time this year, but then next year, I think he really takes over this offense. I think he's going to be a much better pass catcher than he showed. So I'm going to take Kenneth Walker at the 102.
That's so fascinating to me. Mostly because a lot of the people I've been listening to within the industry, like they think Kenneth Walker, like you can kind of wait on Kenneth Walker until the 104, 105 range. Mm-hmm. Right? Like you said, Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson even could be there, which then brings them to me, right? Two top wide receivers, top running backs are off the board. I'm sitting and I'm staring at Drake London and Treylon Burks. This is exactly where I was in our rookie draft literally like 2 weeks ago. 103, first 2 running backs are off the board. What in the world do I do? And I am going to take the guy who I have the most faith in to be the top rookie wide receiver this year, and that actually is Treylon Burks. The thing about Treylon Burks, there's so many discussions about whether it should be Drake London, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson. Here's my thing, why I'm still taking Treylon Burks over Drake London. The Tennessee Titans offense, to me, is better than the Atlanta Falcons offense. Can we agree on that?
Mm-hmm.
Can we also agree that Kyle Pitts is a better secondary weapon than Robert Woods? Can we agree on that?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Can we also agree that Kyle Pitts will probably soak up more targets than Robert Woods will this year?
Considerably more.
Yeah.
Considerably more. Okay. We don't have to break that down, but
Woods might not be healthy. That's why I say that.
Sure. Okay. Well, that makes sense then. The Tennessee Titans gave up their franchise wide receiver in a deal because they didn't want to pay him, and now Treylon Burks is replacing that. There is some substantial investment in Treylon Burks to make sure that he lives up to A.J. Brown expectations. And maybe not live up to, but the point is, Drake London was drafted into a situation to be the wide receiver one. Treylon Burks was drafted into a situation to replace the wide receiver one because they didn't want to pay him, right? I feel like there is more emotional and like gotta make it work investment in Treylon Burks than there is in Drake London. So I think Treylon Burks pays off more quickly, and I think he has just as successful of a fantasy career as Drake London does down the road. And also, like, I'm sorry, like as much as I love like Marcus Mariota's rushing upside, when I'm talking about wide receivers and his passing upside, I'm still taking Ryan Tannehill over Marcus Mariota. Like just because Ryan Tannehill had a down season, I'm still taking him over Marcus Mariota 10 times out of 10 for whoever's throwing my wide receiver the football. So
Yeah.
I'm going Treylon Burks at 3. I don't think you can really change my mind otherwise on that. Tyler, you're back on the clock at 104.
Yeah. The one player that you can make an argument for right here at 104 is James Cook, just because, again, scarcity of running backs. To me, that's a little early, just because
Far
we
too
don't
early
know.
for me.
We don't really know what his role is going to be this year. Like, it could take him a while to actually like get some NFL game time. We don't know, so that's why I think the 104 is a little early for Cook. So that means you got to look wide receiver, and I'm going to spice it up a little bit here, and I'm going to go Garrett Wilson here.
I don't mind that at all.
That's why I was going to take it to 105.
And it really Can you guys hear that, by the way?
Yeah, I can hear it, but it's also coming through on my end. So I'm not sure if it's actually coming through the system. But I can hear it in the background,
okay.
So
Okay.
of yours.
Yeah, I tried muting the sound, didn't do a thing. So, anyway, it really comes down to Drake London and Garrett Wilson here. Drake London probably has the easiest, or he has the most accessibility to targets and potential production in fantasy this year out of the wide receivers. But I'm kind of anticipating a Kyle Pitts transition a little bit for Drake London, where it will take him a little bit of it will take him a couple games to kind of get up to speed. And I think Garrett Wilson coming out of the draft was the best wide receiver. I don't understand the arguments that Garrett Wilson is not the wide receiver one in the Jets offense at this moment. Like, Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver one in the Jets offense, and he's going to be the guy that's on the slant game or going on the out routes and all that stuff. Like, he will get volume. So that's why I'm taking him here at the 104.
He's also in a situation where there's not cornerback ones on him constantly, right? Like Elijah Moore still may end up drawing a lot of that cornerback one coverage. So Garrett Wilson may actually, wow, man, my voice is all over the place tonight. Garrett Wilson may actually like end up like being free on quite a few routes. I mean, dude's a fantastic route runner. So, yeah, no, I don't mind that pick at all. I mean, seriously, when you have Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London, and you have to make a decision between the three, I would rather have someone make the decision for me so I know who to pick than at the 105, which Cameron, I can only imagine who you're going with at the 105 here now.
We've said his name enough times. I'm taking Drake London. I don't see any way he's under 110 targets this year. They just have no one else in that offense to throw to. I'm not saying they're quality targets, but he's going to get a ton of targets, and he's so big, you got to think he scores a lot of touchdowns, or maybe not a lot this year, but, 8 touchdowns doesn't feel out of the realm of possibilities for him this season. And moving forward, he's got great upside. First wide receiver taken in the draft. You know they're going to invest in him. You don't take a guy at the 8th pick unless you're really all in on him. So got to think quarterback situation is only going to get better from here. He's only going to get better. Pitts, like we said with Wilson and Elijah Moore, Pitts probably going to draw the quarterback one most games. Because he's just that much of a mismatch when you don't put that guy on him. And so he's the obvious guy here at 105. I thought I was going to get Wilson here. I thought Ty was going to take Drake London because I also have Wilson over London. But I could not pass up London here.
No, and especially when you're looking at the next two guys. And this is where, the second decision of the draft comes in, right? Or maybe the third, right? Breece Hall is the clear 101. The next debate is, are you going to take a running back or a wide receiver at the 102? Your third decision is then, okay, which wide receiver am I taking? Now when you get to the 106, assuming these are the first 5 guys off the board, now you're sitting and you're looking at Chris Olave, who winds up in a pretty darn good situation in New Orleans. As a number 2 wide receiver to Michael Thomas, may end up being the wide receiver 1 because that's the other piece of news we didn't share. Michael Thomas still may not be healthy. There are still a few hurdles in his recovery, according to Dennis Allen. I hate hearing that. If upon hearing that, I'm out on Michael Thomas completely. I want nothing to do with him in any of my leagues this year. I'm not touching him with the 10-foot pole. So Chris Olave becomes extremely intriguing. But then you have Jameson Williams, who, if it weren't for his ACL tear, would have been the number 1 wide receiver in this draft, and he probably would have gone, do you think the Jets would have taken him at 4 in the draft? Would that have been a possibility?
I don't think he passed up on Sauce.
I mean, hindsight 2020, but thinking about it,
maybe, but I don't think they could have.
But
I do think he'd be really high. That their next pick and the Falcons pick, he would have been in consideration there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, he would have been. So I guess that's more so my point of Jameson Williams would have clearly been the wide receiver 1 here. And if it weren't for his ACL tear, he would have been the number 1 wide receiver. I'm still buying into the talent of Jameson Williams. So I am actually going to take him ahead of Chris Olave here at the 106. This is Dynasty. Jameson Williams will come back. They were able to repair his knee perfectly. I had read a report where, not that his ACL tear was less than previous or any other ACL tears, but there was something that had to do with his recovery where he was far more likely to return to full steam than someone who had torn their ACL completely. Don't quote me on any of that, but I will take Jameson Williams over Chris Olave here. I just have confidence in the long-term talent and the, at one point, clear-cut wide receiver 1 in this draft. Ty, you're back on the clock at 107.
Yeah, I'll try to speed this up because we're already 40 minutes in. We've got 2 more rounds. So this is where I start to consider James Cook, right? I said 104 was a little early. 107 is where I start to consider. But you've got to go Chris Olave here at 107. He's probably got the highest floor out of all rookie receivers, honestly, this year. And really, these 5 wide receivers can go in any order, honestly. If you like Wilson more than Burks, I wouldn't bat an eye at it. I mean, I totally understand it. If you like Jameson as a wide receiver 1, just because he could, if he was healthy, he has the highest ceiling. That's what I'm trying to say. He has the highest ceiling. If you want him as your wide receiver 1, totally get it. So Olave here at 107, to me, seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, which begs an interesting question. It seems like Chris Olave is the 107 at every point in every mock draft that I have seen done. why does Chris Olave always have to be the 107? And, like, we can give quick answers on this, but, like, why is he always the 107? Like, why doesn't he go ahead of Jameson Williams? Why doesn't he go ahead of Treylon Burks? Why doesn't he? Garrett Wilson even, who's, like, Garrett Wilson is still in competition for targets. Like, let's get that clear. Like, even though Garrett Wilson may be the wide receiver 1, like, he has 2 other viable targets, 3 if you want to include CJ Uzomah. I wouldn't bat an eye. 4 if you want to include Michael Carter. Like, other viable targets around him to soak up, some of those targets. So why is Chris Olave always at 7?
I think it's because he kind of played third fiddle last year in Ohio State. He was the third target behind Garrett Wilson and
Smith and Jigba.
Jackson.
Yep.
There you go. And so I think that's kind of where it comes from. I don't think it takes away from his talent. They were just saying, like, those 2 other wide receivers in Ohio State are just that much more talented, And so I kind of think that's where it comes from. But like you said, he's got a great spot. He's still super, super talented.
Super talented. Like, if I have the 107 in my drafts, I'm thrilled if Chris Olave falls to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if I get any of those top 5 wide receivers, I'm thrilled. Even Kenneth Walker, right? I think 1 through 7 you can be pretty satisfied. Which then Cameron puts you on the clock with 108. This is where it starts to get interesting now, because those are the top 7 guys. It's consensus. In what order you want to put them in after Breece Hall at the 101, I think, is up for debate. But where do you go here at the 108 now?
I think I'm going to pass on Cook, just because I don't know exactly what his role is going to be. He could just be a pass catcher, and I don't want to put the 108 here. That leaves me with 3 wide receivers I look at right now. I'm actually not going to look at Jahan Dotson here. I'm going to look at George Pickens, Sky Moore, and Christian Watson. Because I believe in the talent of all 3. But I don't think I'm going to go Pickens here, because I'd rather swing for the fences. Because Pickens has a chance to be wide receiver 2, but he's not going to overtake Deontay Johnson, and Mitch Trubisky's going to do it for him. Sky Moore's got Patrick Mahomes. Christian Watson's got Aaron Rodgers. Just kind of comes down to who you're taking between the 2. I am going to go with Christian Watson, because I think the Packers are just that much more desperate for wide receiver talent that even if he's not great, he has to get targets. They took him that high. They just need someone big on the outside. I know Lazard's there, but he's not nearly as athletic as Christian Watson. I don't actually love Watson as a prospect, but the landing spot you just can't pass up on, so I'm going to take Watson here.
I was so hoping you would take Sky Moore or Pickens and make my decision at the 109 extremely easy, because now I'm looking at the 109 and I'm scratching my head, because on the one hand I feel like it's obvious I should take Sky Moore. I'm like, I get why people are excited about James Cook, but give me a reason why I should trust anything Buffalo does with their running backs. Like, they have been the definition of, like, non-committal, right? Like, right when they want to commit to somebody, they get cold feet. And they're like, oh, no, wait. Actually, you know what? Why don't we give Devin Singletary 20 touches this week? Oh, wait. Hold on. We gave him too many last week. What if we actually go back to Zach Moss? But wait, we also have Matt Breida on the right. It's like, I don't know what the Bills are going to do with their running backs. I don't want to play that headache game. On the other hand, like, I don't think it's fair to just assume that Sky Moore is going to be the superstar talent with Patrick Mahomes. Like, the landing spot is exciting, but they have Juju Smith-Schuster, who, at this point, I would still rank ahead of Sky Moore, because I know what Juju Smith-Schuster can do. They signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Big body, 6'4", speedster, right? Like, talented guy. Got to learn how to catch football a little bit better, but I digress. They have Mecole Hardman, who's been in that system forever. They have Travis Kelce, who is going to be the number 1 target. Like, I don't know if it's fair to assume Sky Moore just comes in and it's like, oh, Tyreek Hill, 110 targets this year, no question. Like, I don't think it's fair to assume that. And you look at George Pickens. Deontay Johnson's in a contract year. If they don't want to pay him the big bucks, does George Pickens become wide receiver 1 next year if they don't bring Deontay back? I mean, this is where it becomes a headache for me. So, I think what I'm going to do is I am going to play running back roulette, and I am going to take James Cook here, mostly because I want, and this is PPR, so I'm going to trust James Cook is actually going to get quite a bit of the receiving work this year. Devin Singletary is in a contract year. They may not bring him back, so I am going to take the chance on James Cook here, mostly because at this point, like as exciting as Sky Moore seems in Kansas City, I don't think it's a guarantee he just produces top 25 numbers off rip. I think James Cook can get to top 25 numbers eventually at a position that desperately needs running backs to produce more upper tier numbers. So I am going to lean James Cook there at the 109. Tyler, you're on the clock at 110.
Yeah, this leaves me in a horrible spot because I could go like with 5 different players. I would feel okay with here at 110. So I'll just start weeding them out. Pickens, I think it's a little early. I think part of my thing is like attitude with Pickens because he is, I'll call it a free spirit to be nice. Dotson's interesting too, just because Washington took him so early in the first round that they saw something that they like and that they want to utilize. And in some ways, I kind of like Dotson a little more than Sky Moore, just because Sky Moore has the hardest fight for targets, as Lucas alluded to earlier, with all of their wide receivers. Then I look at running back and I'm like, Dameon Pierce is nice. But then I look at quarterback and I'm like, Kenny Pickett.
Really?
And with that being
this
said...
This isn't super flex.
Yeah, I'm going Jahan Dotson here.
Okay, I was going to say, I'm like, whoa.
I was going to build some suspense, but no, my reasoning for Dotson at 110 is solely because Washington took him at 16. They took him so much higher than so many people were expecting. And I wonder if it's borderline that they, not borderline. I wonder if they see a bit of Curtis Samuel in Jahan Dotson a little bit, where he's just a playmaker, right? Like that was his thing in Penn State, was he made plays happen. He made good things happen when he had the ball in his hands. So that's, you could call it optimism with Jahan Dotson. It's not a guarantee that he produces right away rookie year. Also, just because he will also be fighting for, for production with guys like De'Ami Brown, who was taken in the 3rd round 2 years ago now, and Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin, right? But with them taking Dotson so high, they like him a lot.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, I think at this point it's interesting with the wide receivers that are on the board. Again, because after you get to James Cook, you do look at the Jahan Dotsons, the Sky Moores, the Pickens, right? What order do you take these guys in? So, Cameron, I guess that leads to you then with 111. Are you going another wide receiver here?
I am going another wide receiver. I actually liked the film I saw in Sky Moore. I'm taking that upside. I know, like you said, they had Juju. He's on a 1 year, though. There's that chance that Sky Moore outplays him this year. I don't think he does personally, but I do think they're going to see enough where they like him. Being attached back from Mahomes, I just don't think you can beat it, so I'm taking Sky Moore.
I think I would agree. Again, with the 109, I am so extremely torn. You could go any of these guys, and I went bat and eye. It comes down to preference, really. The 112 to wrap out the first round, I am going to take George Pickens here. Again, Deontay in a contract year, with how many wide receiver moves we've seen this offseason, I don't think it's a guarantee Pittsburgh just brings him back. So I think they could let Deontay walk. I think George Pickens is extremely talented. I think he fell into the right system with Mike Tomlin to help him kind of, if character is a concern, Mike Tomlin will get that figured out. Look, he dealt with Antonio Brown for how many years? I don't think George Pickens is anywhere close. I don't know. I guess maybe I shouldn't assume. But my point being is that we've seen Mike Tomlin deal with character issues before. So if that's an issue, George Pickens fell into the perfect spot. Now, I don't know if I really believe in Kenny Pickett long term, but I will take a chance on that upside of getting a wide receiver 1 at the tail end of round 1 in George Pickens in future years. All right, that wraps out the first round. So the first round, we had Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Jamison Williams, Chris Olave, Christian Watson, James Cook, Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, George Pickens. let's move on to round 2 now. We are a bit into this podcast. Let's clip it along a little bit. Can give our pick, give the reason why we made our pick in like 1 or 2 sentences, and we'll just speed through these next 2 rounds here. Because honestly, we'll get to some names after, probably 2/3 of the way through the second round, and some people will be like, "What?" We'll just be like, "Yeah, film's good, opportunity's good. Next," right? Like that might be it, honestly. So, Ty, you're on the clock with the 201. What are you thinking here? Some interesting names on the board.
Yeah, I'll keep this short and sweet. I'm going Dameon Pierce here at the 201. I thought he was for sure going to go 112 to you, Lucas, but look, he's got a pretty advantageous situation in Houston where he will get utilized for sure just because they have no one else. I mean, Marlon Mack, if you're really going to look and read between the lines and you're really going to be afraid that Marlon Mack is going to steal carries away from Dameon Pierce, I don't know what to tell you. Dameon Pierce is probably the next best, or he is most definitely the next best running back, and he's probably going to be the best running back that goes in round 2.
Yep.
Yeah, he has the opportunity. And the knock is coach just didn't want to use him in college, right? Like, split, I think, is a little bit of an overstatement even. Right? Like, Dameon Pierce did not split carries. He, saw some carries. But when he saw carries, he was explosive. And he has opportunity. Mm-hmm. And that's all you can ask for in fantasy. So, yeah, I'm with you there, Tyler. Cameron, 202. What do you think?
I'm taking Isaiah Spiller. I know he's a day 3 pick. I know it's a little late, but even with Eckler there's no way Eckler commands 300 carries. He's just not going to. They need someone else. And everyone we've seen in Los Angeles just has not looked good. So he's going to get opportunity. And I liked what I saw in college. I thought he looked better than Kenneth Walker, but obviously he did not test well, or didn't test at all. And then, so I think that's what really dropped him. And so I think he'll be just fine. And I think he will be a great complement for the next 2 years with Eckler until he takes over.
Yeah, Isaiah Spiller's an interesting one. I think that's really, it comes down to personal preference at the end of the day of where are you going to, how do you prioritize Spiller and his role in that Chargers offense with Austin Eckler? So I don't hate the pick at all. I think it's a fine spot to have him go. I'm on the clock here, and I'm torn. I'm looking at a couple guys. I'm looking at Rachaad White. I'm looking at David Bell. I'm looking at Alec Pierce. And I might shock the world here. I think I'm going to go Alec Pierce. Oh. And my reason, I was crunching Matt Ryan's numbers and his wide receivers numbers the other day. And I just posted a video about this on TikTok today. Matt Ryan's wide receiver 2 over the years, here's what their stat line has been. 66 targets. This is over the past 5 years, their seasonal average. So they've averaged 96 targets every year, 66 receptions on those 96 targets, 789 yards, 6 touchdowns. Good for at least good for an average wide receiver 30 finish every year. Look, I understand that Indianapolis is running a different system. I understand they're more run heavy, but I'll tell you what, if even we get a Walmart, Julio, and Calvin Ridley with Michael Pittman and Alec Pierce, in my mind, that's enough to put Alec Pierce on the flex radar every week. I don't think that's unreasonable to think. So, I love Alec Pierce, 6'3", 211, has the prototypical possession wide receiver, is a burner too. He can get downfield. So I'm going Alec Pierce there with the 203. Tyler, 204, just drafted Dameon Pierce. Got a few interesting names on the board, but where are you going?
I'm going John Mechie here. And the main reason why is because before Jameson Williams kind of took over / when Mechie had his injury, John Mechie was a wide receiver 1 in that Alabama offense. And now he's going to Houston where he's only, when he's healthy, he's only going to be fighting Brandon Cooks for targets. Nico Collins is not a threat. Chris Conley is not a threat. So Mechie's going to be able to step in right away and be able to produce.
Yep.
Yeah, I think John Mechie is a name that's going to get overlooked in rookie drafts, and I think that's dangerous to overlook him. I think he's absolutely worth taking early second round if you have a need at wide receiver. I think John Mechie can absolutely produce. Cameron, 205.
I'm going David Bell. I think that he is going to be the number 2 in Cleveland, and whenever you're attached to Deshaun Watson, that's not a bad thing. I think he can make contested catches. I think he'll be. I mean, obviously he ran an awful 40. He's not lightning fast, but you play like an Anquan Bolden and you have a Deshaun Watson at quarterback, you'll be just fine. So I'm going to go David Bell.
Yeah, if you didn't take David Bell there, I was going to take him at the 206, but because you did, I think I am leaning Rachaad White at this point. Lands in a decent offense in Tampa Bay. I don't think he gets the bulk of the work right away, but let's be real. Leonard Fournette is aging. Rachaad White is coming in hungry. Dude said he came in to start, right? Like, he didn't come in to be a backup. Like, dude is coming in hungry. He's got a great size to be both 3-down back, be a power runner, and a great receiving back. He has great hands. He has such great hands. So I have a lot of faith in Rachaad White. I think it's an investment that's not for this year, but I think it is for next year and 2023 and 2024 for sure. I think we could start to hear Rachaad White's name a lot more. So I'm going Rachaad White at the 206. Tyler, 207.
And we see our first quarterback off the board here, and I'm going Kenny Pickett.
Ooh, interesting.
There are only a couple guys I would really consider here instead of Pickett. But I think Pickett at this point is going to be the most, he's going to score you the most fantasy points in the nearest future with the guys that are left on the board. That was an interesting
Wow.
Wow.
That was interesting. What was that?
That was Sleeper. So Sleeper now has noises whenever you make picks. So that's probably what you heard.
Yeah. But again, Kenny Pickett's going to be scoring the most fantasy points out of anyone that's left on the board at this point. So this is probably where I feel comfortable with Pickett.
All righty. I'm up next, so I'll go Brian Robinson. After what Ron Rivera said, he is going to be splitting some carries with Antonio Gibson. If he's already saying he's going to get touches before he's even getting a training camp, I'm going to take the shot on Brian Robinson here.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all because I think you're in the running back range where it's like, take your pick. Who's your favorite guy? Yeah. Take your pick. At this point, I think I'm going to stop the run on running backs only because I'm looking at them now. I just don't have as much confidence in them as I do with one wide receiver that I'm looking at, and that wide receiver is Jalen Tolbert. He is probably coming into a situation where he will be the wide receiver 2 to start the season if Michael Gallup doesn't play. I know Dallas Goedert is there. Or not Dallas Goedert, excuse me. Dalton Schultz, thank you. I always get the two mixed up. They're being drafted right next to each other. Dalton Schultz. I am taking Jalen Tolbert there. Eventual wide receiver 2, at least wide receiver 3. We saw relevant numbers come from those guys. And I don't think it's a guarantee some of these running backs on the board pan out right now. Like Zamir White might be the only guy that I consider, but Vegas didn't pick up any fifth-year options on any of their guys, and on any of the 3 of them. Cleveland Farrell, I just didn't expect them to. Josh Jacobs was a little bit surprising, but I'm not worried about it. My gut feeling is to not be worried. So I'm taking Jalen Tolbert there, mostly because I'm just looking at the running backs, and I don't know if I can trust any of them to pan out at this point. So, Tyler, that brings you back at the 210 now.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at this point because the running backs, the only ones I would consider are Zamir White and Tyler Algier. And I would lean Algier over Zamir White, but it doesn't sit right with me. And I think the guy that I'm actually going to go with is Trey McBride.
Yep. I was waiting for him to go.
And he's tight end 1 in the waiting in Arizona. And yes, Zach Ertz just signed a 3-year deal and whatnot, but he's going into a high volume offense in Arizona. And if they can figure out how to keep Kyler upright and not have him scramble around all over the place, especially now with D-Hop suspended, there is an opportunity for McBride to really kind of show up if he sees the field.
Yeah. If you didn't take him at the 210 and Cameron didn't take him at the 211, he was going 212 to me. I honestly think we might have let Trey McBride slide a little bit too far. Honestly, if you want to take him mid-second round, just get a premium at the position eventually. I don't hate that. I don't mind that at all. So I think that if you can get Trey McBride at the 210 in your league, I think that's a win. That's a major win for you. So, yeah, no, I love that pick. I think we probably let him slide a little too far, but it's all opinion at that point. So, Cameron, 211, you're on the clock.
I'm going to shock the world, and I'm going draft capital. Going my guy, Mr. Tyrion Davis Price here at the 211. Trey Sermon does not mean that all third-round running backs are not going to work out in San Francisco. You don't take a guy this high again. They didn't have a first-round pick, so this is like their second pick or whatever, or their third pick. And so you don't take a guy that high unless you're going to use him or plan on using him unless he sucks in training camp. So I think he gets some touches. And Elijah Mitchell and all San Francisco 49er running backs don't exactly stay healthy all the time. So he's going to see the field. I mean, it'll probably be a gross pick, but that's kind of what they all are here. So I'm going to go with a guy that has a chance to see the field this season.
At the same time, he could just be Trey Sermon part 2.
He definitely could.
Right, or it's just like we just don't know. But also, like when you do look at an Algier, and you do look at a Zamir White, like they drafted this guy with capital. And the 49ers will use the running backs. So I don't hate the pick whatsoever. You guys didn't leave me in a good spot because I am clueless on what I want to do here now. And I mean, I'm really deciding between Tyler Algier or Zamir White. And this is the exact situation I found myself in in our rookie draft not too long ago. Do I take Tyler Algier or do I take Zamir White? On the one hand, I like Tyler Algier because they want CPAT to play more wide receiver this year. They let Mike Davis go. Damian Williams isn't as big of a threat to me. And you know what? When I look at Arthur Smith, he likes power running backs. Tyler Algier is the definition of a power running back. That dude is powerful. However, Oakland may have just gone out and got their guy in Zamir White, who looked really good in college, right? Like, I loved Zamir White's film. But you're sitting on Zamir White behind Josh Jacobs. He won't be relevant this year. Like, if they re-sign Josh Jacobs, Zamir White may even be less relevant the following year. And with Mike McDaniels, he likes a system of running backs. So Zamir White also gives me some heebie-jeebies. But Tyler Algier could be nothing in the NFL. He was a fifth-round pick. He could be nothing. So with that in mind, I think I am going to take Zamir White here, though it doesn't mean in our rookie draft I regret taking Algier. I think I needed to swing for the fences at running back with the state my current team is in. And I needed to swing for the fence. And I don't think Zamir White was a big enough fence swinging for me. But if you're fine at running back with your team in your rookie draft, I think I would lean Zamir White over Tyler Algier. Just because of draft capital and just because of the situation and just because of the offense. So I'm taking Zamir White 212 there. All right, we enter into the third round now. Part of me is just like, let's just clip through these names because a lot of people don't know, won't be as familiar with these people, but we'll pick. We'll let them know kind of their spot in the offense and why they have upside. That's kind of where I'm at. All right. So, Tyler, 3-on-1, you're on the clock.
Yeah, I'm going to go Wan'Dale Robinson here. This is 301 is probably going to be he's probably going to be gone before 301 in most rookie drafts, honestly. I just think that us three, the fellas, we just are very confused with the Wan'Dale Robinson pick still. But it's kind of the same logic that I used with with Jahan Dotson. Right. The Giants took Wan'Dale in the second round. They want to use him. It may not be this year, but down the road, most certainly they want to. Whether that means that certainly Shepard's out, Kenny Galladay's on his way out in the future, whatever. Wan'Dale Robinson will be utilized in some way in New York.
Yep.
Yeah. They drafted him with, again, another capital pick. They went out and got this guy, so they want to utilize him, would be my guess. Cameron, 302.
Talking about draft capital, I'm going to take another head-scratching wide receiver in Tyquan Thornton.
Yep.
He's a speedster. They don't really have anyone. I mean, they got Jacoby Myers, and they refuse to use Kendrick Bourne. But I'm going to take Tyquan Thornton on the upside in draft capital.
This is where I'm going to go Tyler Algier. I'm not afraid of Damian Williams. Going back and watching tape of Tyler Algier, like, I am in love with his power back ability. And he's not just like north and south. Like, he has a little bit of shift in him. He has a little bit of wiggle in him. Not a ton, but again, I think of power backs in an Arthur Smith offense. Cordero Patterson was not an Arthur Smith running back. Mike Davis was not a Arthur Smith running back. Like, Mike Davis has a little bit more power in him, but like, Mike Davis is on his way out. Like, he's no spring chicken either. So Tyler Algier, I'm going pure upside here. Again, I'm just looking at some of the names coming up here. Yeah, it's a pure upside pick. So Tyler Algier at the 303. Tyler 304.
Yeah, I'm gonna go Desmond Ridder here.
I love it.
I was thinking about Malik Willis, and I thought back to kind of, again, the Falcons' offense where they utilize the run game with a power back, but then they like to use play action. And you know who Desmond Ridder really reminds me of? Marcus Mariota and Ryan Tannehill.
I was going to throw out Ryan Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill and Marcus Mariota, both mobile-ish quarterbacks that are best used in play action. Desmond Ridder is the exact same way. So I think Ridder has the best chance of producing soon-ish compared to Malik Willis because he is going to sit behind Tannehill for a bit. But I could totally understand going Malik Willis maybe even earlier just because of the upside that he does have.
Yep, 100%. I do agree. I think in rookie drafts, you do have to draft Desmond Ridder ahead of Malik Willis, no matter how much you love Malik Willis's talent. I 100% agree with that. Cameron, 305.
Take Kyron Williams for the Rams. You know, we talked about Cam Akers earlier. Do we really know how he's going to perform? And they obviously didn't love Darrell Henderson if they just completely replaced him after Cam Akers came back. So why not take a guy who looked good on film? A lot of people liked him, tested terrible, but, you know, has a chance to carve out a nice little role for him, especially this late in the draft. So I'm going to take Kyron.
306, I'm going Khalil Shakir. This screams future slot wide receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And I looked at this number the other day when I was statting out the Buffalo Bills. Did you know Cole Beasley saw 110 targets in 2020? So they love using the slot receiver. So look, they signed Jameson Crowder to a 1-year deal. I think he'll be kind of a 1-year thing in Buffalo, but give Khalil Shakir a year. He'll fit in perfect with that dynamic, fast-paced offense. I love Khalil Shakir. If I can get Khalil Shakir in the third round at this point, I'm thrilled. So, yeah, Khalil Shakir at the 306 for me. Tyler, 307.
I'm going to go Malik Willis here. And
yes,
it's two straight it's two straight quarterbacks, but I feel like a Malik Willis pick here is just solely because of upside. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Love Malik Willis there. Like I said, because if you or Cameron didn't take him the next two picks, he was going to be my next pick. Cameron, 308.
I'm going Ty's guy right here, Pierre Strong.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's a gross situation, but Damian Harris might leave next year. Ramondre Stevenson's been in the Bill Belichick doghouse before. Maybe he kind of climbs his way up, and next year he is the lead back. You know, we know he has the talent. So, again, I mean, that's all you're drafting on right now with running backs in the third round is that just potential upside. So I'm going to take Pierre Strong.
I'm going to take another running back, and I am going to go Keontae Ingram here. Someone's got to do some kind of work behind James Conner, and I don't trust James Conner to stay healthy a full year. So that's just it. And I don't think they want to lean on Eno Benjamin. Just not the kind of guy that screams great backup running back. I don't know. Not that Keontae Ingram really does either. But if something happens to James Conner, which has been known to happen, I will take the first guy up, which could be Keontae Ingram. So late third round, Keontae Ingram at the 309. Last three picks here, gentlemen. Tyler, 310. Who are you going with?
I'm going to explain this before making my pick. Who was the wide receiver for Denver that just got arrested today?
Mr. Jerry Jeudy.
So who are some beneficiaries of Jerry Jeudy potentially missing time?
Cortland Sutton. KJ Hamler.
Patrick.
Albert
O.
O, right? He's a guy that can, because he projects to be the starter. And I'm going Greg Dulcich here because I just don't believe in Albert O. I really don't. And with Denver taking him in the third round, they see how they see something that Dulcich can actually fit in their offense. So I'm going to go Greg Dulcich, and again, that is purely because I just don't believe in Albert O. And I could be very wrong, but I'll go Greg Dulcich here.
I'm fine with a little bit of Albert O slander on here. I think the public's way too high on him. Some people are ready to stake him top 12. I'm not ready to put him there whatsoever. Tell me the last time Russell Wilson elevated a tight end to top 12 status.
Yeah, I agree. All right, with my last pick, I'm going to take another Packers wide receiver, Romeo Doubs. Same reason, taking Christian Watson. Guy attached to Aaron Rodgers. They just got a mess there. You don't know who's going to come out on top. So, I mean, he's 6'2", 200, so he's got pretty decent size on him. Why not just take the chance?
Yeah, you're taking chances on wide receivers at this point. And
oh yeah,
it's funny because we talk about taking chances, and there's still a wide receiver 2 for a team on the board. I'm not going to take Velus Jones, but I have to throw it out there because he is the wide receiver 2 for the Chicago Bears right now. Byron Pringle's arrested. I don't think Byron Pringle is anything for certain. So, I mean, Velus Jones is sitting there. If we're going to talk about volume and opportunity, right? He might have the most volume and opportunity left on the board. Again, I am not taking Velus Jones, but I think it's worth saying because he is someone that I almost considered in our rookie drafts, no matter how much I despise that pick for the Chicago Bears. I am looking at 3 people here, though. I'm looking at Tyler Beatty, I'm looking at Justin Ross, and I'm looking at Calvin Austin. I love Calvin Austin. I love the speedster out of Memphis. Tyler Beatty, again, with everything in Baltimore, I don't think anything's a guarantee there. Any of those guys, if they're not healthy, Tyler Beatty could step up and play a role. But they also just signed Mike Davis, so I'm not really feeling that pick anymore. I'm actually going to lean Justin Ross here. And I understand his procedure is very serious. But again, at this point, and this is end of the draft, right? So maybe you know what? Maybe I should lean, assuming some drafts will go longer than 36 picks. I think I will lean Calvin Austin here instead of Justin Ross. That being said, if Justin Ross does fall this far in your draft, if he makes it all the way to the end of even the 4th round, I think it's worth scooping him up there just because of the offense he's in. And Justin Ross was a great talent in college, and he falls into Patrick Mahomes' hands, right? I think that could be great, but I can't do it with Calvin Austin on the board. I'd even look Danny Gray over Justin Ross. If Debo gets traded, Danny Gray plays a bigger role in that offense now. I really like Danny Gray. I think Kyle Phillips could play a role with Treylon Burks, Robert Woods being the only 2 guys there. I'm just throwing out a bunch of other names as we kind of close out that we didn't really talk about as much. But I am going to lean Calvin Austin here for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That will be my final pick of our rookie mock draft. So there we have it, fellas. How are we feeling? How are we feeling after that mock draft? You surprised anybody that fell to you? You surprised that did you feel like you had to reach for anybody that you weren't sure about? Initial thoughts.
Honestly, I think we've talked it through enough that it kind of went how I thought.
Yeah.
Knowing Davis Price probably could have waited on. I don't think he's going this high in normal drafts, but if I have that pick, that's where I'm picking him at. But yeah, it was a journey, but it was a good one.
I think there was just so many more decisions on guys. I have tiers and clumps of guys, right?
Yes.
And I know where I have them within their tiers, but when you asked me to pick between Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore, and George Pickens, Like, I still shrug my shoulders, and I'm probably going to pick somebody different every time. But I will tell you, Christian Watson is at the top of that tier, and he is clearly the guy I want there first. That was just kind of my initial thought of like, crap, okay. James Cook, throw James Cook in there. Where do you put James Cook now in the first round? Again, I think I found a nice home for him where I actually think he should land, but that was something else that I kind of had thought about during the draft. Tyler, anything from you?
I guess not real. I mean, the one running back I thought about was Snoop Connor.
Yep.
Just because we don't know the status of James Robinson, and we don't really know the status of ETN at this point. So he could kind of be a sneaky get because they've got no one else in Jacksonville, but that's really the only guy. I mean, Jelani Woods, maybe.
No, I'm a Mo Alley Cox believer. Through thick and thin.
You are.
I believe in Mo Alley Cox. That's my guy. That's my man.
I mean, can someone
Can we get a Mo Alley Cox feature on the podcast? We need to make that happen.
I was going to say, is there really any difference between Jelani Woods and Mo Alley Cox?
That's the other thing. They're both huge.
They're literally the exact same player. So, no, I think majority of these picks are, like Cam said, we explained it all, and it makes sense, at least in our minds.
Yeah.
If you want to go see the big board for our mock draft, you can head on over to our YouTube if you're not there already. Fantasy Football Fellas on YouTube. If you're listening to the pod, you can go check that out. But I think that wraps out our mock draft and another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Fellas, any final thoughts as we close out the episode?
Don't do anything too dumb in Dynasty because you regret it a lot longer than redraft.
That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah, don't be cute with it.
Don't get cute with it.
Just do the right thing. Do what's best for your team, but also don't reach, because when you reach is when you're desperate. Not a good place to be at.
I can't say anything else other than you are the only one who can determine the value of your draft picks. Nobody else can determine that value for you. So with that, we wrap out another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas. You can find us on our socials, FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And you know what? Before we close out the episode, I do have one more thing we need to talk about. I think we need to let the people know that there's a chance that they can go to an NFL game if they're choosing this next year. I think we need to let them know.
Really?
We need to let them know. We have an exciting announcement to make. We, for the upcoming NFL season, we are excited to be partnering with Super Draft. And Super Draft is a daily fantasy sports platform where you can create daily fantasy lineups with whatever players you want. It's similar to DraftKings. You're familiar with DraftKings. You create a daily fantasy lineup. You have a budget to create your lineup. The nice thing about Super Draft, though, is that you can make your lineup with whichever players you want. You're not stuck to a budget. That's great because now these players have multipliers. So a guy like Jonathan Taylor, his multiplier, if you want him in your lineup, great. He doesn't cost you anything extra, but his multiplier is going to be at 1. The points that Jonathan Taylor gets will be the points that you receive. Versus if you were to go out and get a guy like Chase Edmonds, let's say, his multiplier for the week might be 1.45. Let's say 1.5 for easier math. So if Jonathan Taylor goes out and scores 20 fantasy points on a given week, Chase Edmonds could go out and score 15, but in Super Draft would score the same amount as Jonathan Taylor with that 1.5 multiplier. So, with all that said, go sign up for Super Draft using the link in any of our social bios, or you can sign up with the promo code FELLAS, FELLAS. If you sign up, make a first deposit by June 15th, you will be entered into a drawing to go to an NFL game of your choosing this year. We will give you 2 tickets, up to $100 value for each ticket. You can go to whichever NFL game you want to this year. Now, that being said, we will be drawing the winner if we hit 100 first-time depositors. So if you want to make that happen, go tell your friends to sign up with Super Draft using the promo code FELLAS. Right? Once we get 100 first-time depositors with our promo code, we'll draw that name by June 15th. We have to hit that number before we do the drawing. So, go sign up for Super Draft. We're excited to be partnering with them this next year. Let's get you to an NFL game of your choosing. Let's get you to an NFL game you're choosing. You can go deposit $5 in SuperDraft. You're in the drawing. So go sign up for SuperDraft. Promo code fellas. You can use the link in any of our bios on social media. Now we wrap out another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We are Three Stooges being dudes, the Fantasy Football Fellas. Deuces.
Deuces.